Welcome everyone to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading webinar. The webinar will begin in just a second, but we just wanted to invite everyone to connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. Please use hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learn from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Once again, the campaign would love to connect with you, so on Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. Once again, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I will be behind the scenes helping to produce this webinar. I have just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. And be sure to select panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. We will dedicate the last 20 to 30 minutes to respond to the questions you post during the discussion. This webinar is being recorded and it will be made available to everyone on Friday, to everyone who registered, and we are streaming the webinar on Facebook Live as well. Lastly, we will be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Lastly, before we start, I just wanted to call your attention to our upcoming GLR Learning Tuesdays webinars, always from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time unless specially noted. On September 29th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we will host a funder-to-funder conversation that will feature several foundation executives discussing how philanthropy is working to expand access to online learning in all communities, especially for our most vulnerable children. On that same day at 3 p.m. Eastern, we invite you to join us for Promising High-Tech, High-Touch Solutions for Back to School. This learning conversation will include school district superintendents and a discussion about strategies to ensure all children have access to learning they need during this year's confusing return to school. And in early October, we plan to feature learning partners to discuss new partnerships and initiatives advancing early school success and supporting parents. We'll be sure to add a link to all of these opportunities in the chat box for information and registration. And joining you now is Emily Simoes, consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Always have to remember to unmute. Thank you so much, Sierra, and welcome to everybody who's joining us today for the GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar, Scaling Virtual Home Visiting Lessons and Insights. And if you've been joining us for our weekly learning conversations over the past year, you may recall a series that we hosted last November that introduced this idea of virtual home visiting, which is an emerging method to enhance the proven practice of home visiting using today's technology to reach more families in real time and at less cost. And we will soon post information about these two sessions that cover the background research and models for virtual home visiting that were emerging at the time. And as we all know, March of 2020 happened and we saw communities shut down all across the country. And suddenly virtual became literally the only way that home visiting professionals could reach families. And in response to this sudden shift, a group of leading home visiting organizations came together to form what's called the Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting Collaborative, or RRVHV, to quickly and efficiently develop and distribute cross-model and cross-system approaches and guidance for the virtual approach. 6 months later, clearly there is much to be learned from this collaborative work. And today we have the awesome chance to learn about the lessons and insights that have been garnered from those collaborative leaders. And our presenters will share how they leverage their extensive resources and expertise to provide best practice principles and strategies to support all home visiting professionals in maintaining meaningful connections with families during this isolating time of COVID-19. Our hope is that you will be able to both make use of and share these strategies to expand virtual home visiting in your own communities. And with that, I will get us started by introducing our moderator and leader of the Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting Collaborative, Constance Scully. Constance will then introduce the rest of our panelists today and then share details about the collaborative's work before engaging with her colleagues in a discussion of their work together. Constance Scully is the president and CEO of Parents as Teachers, which is a leading parent education and early childhood professional development organization serving professionals that works annually with 200,000 plus families in all 50 states, including 115 tribal communities and 7 countries. And in response to COVID-19, Parents as Teachers leveraged its extensive virtual service delivery experiences to lead the Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting Collaborative, along with the Institute for Family Support Professionals and the National Alliance of Home Visiting Models. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our great moderator, Constance, to introduce the rest of our panelists. Constance? We always have to remember to unmute ourselves.
Thanks so much, Emily, for inviting us to share this important and what has been a whirlwind of a journey. I'd really like to start by introducing our panelists for this afternoon. Sophia Jackson is the Early Childhood Systems Director for North Carolina Partnership for Children. Sophia has worked across several sectors to improve opportunities for children, their teachers, and families. In her current role, Sophia promotes system change strategies that address quality, access, and equity, ensuring partnerships, policy, and programming are responsive to the needs of families with young children. Also joining us is Roddy Jones, a senior training specialist in the National Safe Care Training and Research Center, which is housed at the Mark Chaffin Center for Healthy Development in the School of Public Health at Georgia State University. He conducts workshops and provides ongoing coaching and consultation to home visitors and agencies implementing Safe Care, which is also a member organization of the National Alliance of Home Visiting Models. Malia Ramler is an education program officer at the Heising Simons Foundation, which works toward a future where race, income, and home language no longer predict educational opportunity or outcome. Ms. Ramler's work has focused on creating conditions that promote well-being and healthy development for young children and families farthest from opportunity. I'm so glad to have all 3 of our panelists joining us today, and we also have 2 commentators. Portia Kennel is a senior advisor with the Buffett Early Childhood Fund. Before joining the foundation in 2015, she worked as the senior vice president for program innovation at the Ounce of Prevention Fund in Chicago, as well as founding executive director of the Coast to Coast Educare Learning Network. In her current role, Portia is spearheading pioneering work to redefine authentic family engagement in the 21st century. Welcome, Portia. Also, one of my favorite people in the world, Dr. Joshua Sparrow, is the executive director of the Brazelton Touchpoint Center in the Division of Developmental Medicine at Boston Children's Hospital, where he also holds an appointment in the Department of Psychiatry and is associate part-time professor at Harvard Medical School. The Brazelton Touchpoint Center provides professional leadership and organizational development, as well as research and evaluation services for parents, pediatricians, early childhood educators, home visitors, and other leaders supporting families with young children. Welcome to all of our panelists and commentators today. I'd like to start the discussion with just a little bit of information on the journey from where we left off this past November. Parents as Teachers, the next slide, Parents as Teachers goals include engaging parents and caregivers to improve parenting practices and increase parents' knowledge of early development as a way of ensuring children are healthy, safe, and ready to learn. The footprint is indicated on this next slide. As Emily mentioned earlier, we have programs in all 50 states and 115 tribal communities. Families in 8,541 zip codes were served in the US through Parents as Teachers. The National Center supports PAT affiliates delivering our evidence-based model and curriculum subscribers, which are most often other home visiting models subscribing. On the next slide, Parents as Teachers, two-generational approach engages parents and caregivers through these 4 model components. These 4 components were included in what was the pilot program. So this next slide shows Dr. Dorian Traub actually engaging in a virtual visit. So before the pandemic, we knew virtual home visiting, a combination of Parents as Teachers and proven telehealth practices as a solution. This innovation was developed in partnership with Dr. Dorian Traub at the University of Southern California. A 4-year pilot was completed in partnership with USC, utilizing their Department of Social Work and telehealth clinic. 1,700 virtual visits were conducted during the 4-year pilot. Parents indicated that 91% increased their knowledge of child development and 97% were motivated to try new parenting strategies. We developed virtual training and virtual supervision functions, provided parent educators access to our web-based curricula, and offered parents access to parenting information via a web-based portal. Back in November, we were ready to scale, taking this innovation from the incubator to real-world settings. Our plan was to launch virtual home visiting to hundreds of families within 10 sites and demonstrate effectiveness through rigorous research. We were really excited to help lead the field on this concept to eventually inform all models. The next slide kind of indicates where we had to go from this past March, because then came the COVID-19 pandemic. We knew that continuing to reach families was an imperative, not an option. We scurried to disseminate guidance to our network, and with only 2/3 of our affiliates reporting, the total number of virtual visits delivered through Parents as Teachers since mid-March, when Safer at Home orders were issued, is 269,520 virtual visits in the last 6 months. Parents as Teachers has an immense amount of data and experience to inform this work, which is one of the reasons our friend Malia Ramler reached out to us. Home visiting is essential, and thanks to the generous support of the Heising Simons Foundation, home visiting never closed. As we look at the next slide, the Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting Collaborative was formed to provide practice, principles, and strategies to support all home visiting professionals in maintaining meaningful connections with families during this time of increased anxiety and need. Through collaboration, we are leveraging the extensive resources and expertise that exist across home visiting organizations to support the development and distribution of cross-model, cross-system approaches and guidance. All resources are free to the field, no matter what program you operate. This next slide just shows the multitude of organizations that are engaged. The Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting Collaborative is led by a steering committee, including the National Alliance for Home Visiting Models, Parents as Teachers, and the Institute for Family Support Professionals. We also have an advisory team made up of thought leaders from across the home visiting field that guides the response. They include leaders from HRSA and ACF, the Association of State and Tribal Home Visiting Initiatives, or ASHVI, HV Impact, HV Coin, USC, Brazelton Touchpoints, and more. The next slide just indicates this is a website that we've set up. Webinars are available on demand after the live sessions that occur almost weekly, at least 3 times a month now, and can be accessed through this link on the Rapid Response website, and you can find the slide decks and resources and information on upcoming webinars. By the numbers, 43,233 weekly webinar series viewings, live and recorded, have occurred. At least 15 content webinars on virtual telehealth implementation, 4 system webinars addressing field-wide system challenges and opportunities, and 37 resource documents, new resource materials specifically designed to support virtual telehealth services are housed on the site. Because of additional support from more funders, including Kellogg, Pritzker, and now AmChip by way of HRSA, we are also developing more durable content beyond the pandemic. So this slide indicates, the next slide talks about one of the goals of this work for the durable content to live beyond the pandemic. It was decided that a series of modules would be created for family support professionals from all models, and these modules will be hosted on the Institute for the Advancement of Family Support Professionals and offered at no cost. The next slide indicates the threads of content that will be embedded throughout all of the modules on the left, and then on the right are the buckets of overarching topics, or the 6 titles of the modules of durable content that we hope to develop. Those content areas were indicated by engagement through the webinars and the subject matter that bubbled up the most from those engaging with families. So that is much to do about what is happening on the home visiting front for parents as teachers, as well as the rapid response. I'd like to now turn to our panelists. And Sophia, we hear that there is momentum in North Carolina to enhance alignment and collaboration across home visiting programs. Tell us more.
All right, I'm unmuted now. Yes, happy to, Constance. Well, hello everyone, I'm happy to be here. You know, when the pandemic first hit, it was the one thing that brought comfort to me was being in the company of others that were facing similar experiences and doing it together. And that's what the Rapid Response Home Visiting Group has really meant for me. Coming off of 2019, a collection of 40+ organizations have worked together to establish a new vision for home visiting and parenting education. And on the slide here, you'll see that, and as I go through the next couple, you know, conversation points, that one of the key things that we were working toward is to really establish a range of parenting education and home visiting supports. Recognizing that parenting education is, that home visiting is parenting education that happens in the home. We were really looking to bring those 2 fields that are often discussed separately to really bring them together. So there will be a lot of words on these slides, this particular slide, but just want to point out a few things. A couple of goals that we were working toward was choice, really wanting to advance a continuum of models working together. We wanted to be able to align and coordinate those home visiting and parenting education models. We are also centering equity at the center of our work and really focusing on integrating home visiting and parenting education into the larger system of early care and education, which is actually one of my favorite goals in our plan. And also really thinking about impact. So you'll notice that just from the language of our vision and our goals, that there are some common values and goals with the Rapid Response Home Visiting Program. We're all about aligning, being model agnostic as we work toward ensuring that parents have supports that really support them in their role as a child's first teacher. So what I'd like to do is to really just highlight some examples of where alignment and integration really runs through. As I've been participating in the rapid response home visiting activity from the beginning, it was fascinating to have company, not just to talk about virtual and the transition to virtual, but to really do it in a way that was, again, model agnostic. So these are two just examples of what we had already decided in 2019 as a state that we were wanting to work toward: professional development, training, and technical assistance that really work across programs and that are aligned with core competencies. I have a number of colleagues around the state who have been working to develop these core competencies. We are also looking at assessment and planning, again, that really supports that integration and working across model. I just really love this term, model agnostic, because we're here to serve children and families, and we recognize that in order to do that, we really need what the home visiting rapid response group taught us that we could do, and that is work across models. So we know that the pandemic has taught us what's possible when we act with a sense of urgency. So on the next slide, I'd just like to share an example of how the crisis spurred some momentum here in North Carolina. The first thing we did was recognize that we had this big state plan that was newly inked in 2019, and that if there was any time, then now we needed to come together and really identify some common messages so that we can really help people understand, help the public, help legislatures understand, like you said, Constance, that it was not an option to stop home visiting and parenting education, but in fact, even more critical. So when the crisis hit, we took to our plan and we found that establishing some common messages to help with the awareness and knowledge and to remind everyone about the importance was one strategy that we were going to take. So we have developed toolkits as a way of creating and advancing that common message. Another thing is that, my organization, North Carolina Partnership for Children, representing the Smart Start Network, we started to collaborate with other funders in the state in new ways that we hadn't before. It had always been a goal of collaboration. But again, this crisis spurred us to think about how are we collecting data? What does it mean to evaluate model fidelity during this time? And how can we work together to support implementing agencies and thinking about those shifts together? So it's just been really exciting to experience the planning efforts that we did last year really be spurred into action in a few very specific ways.
Thanks so much, Sophia. Do you have any final thoughts before we hear from Roddy?
Yes, and also there's a question in the link in the chat box. Yes, we're happy to share that toolkit, and I believe these slides will also be shared as well. But yes, in closing, I would just like to say that when the pandemic hit, everyone thought of schools and school closing and how do we support teachers and virtual. The home visiting rapid response has inspired and showed us all that we also equally need to prioritize parents and the support that parents need to be their first teachers. This is the time now. I would issue this as a call to action for us all to think about how parenting and home visiting can truly be integrated into a larger system of early care and education that is benefiting that two-generation maternal and child health. So I'm happy to be here on the panel and answer any additional questions.
Thanks again, Sophia. So Roddy, tell us about your work with Safe Care and your experience contributing to the Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting Collaborative.
Yeah, thank you, Constance. So appreciate you inviting me on to share a little bit today. It's been quite a fun time getting to work with colleagues across models and across the field to work on this really important effort. And so, as you mentioned earlier, Constance, I'm a senior training specialist with the National Safe Care Training and Research Center. And Safe Care is a parent support program for families with kids birth to 5. We've got 3 different areas of focus. One of them is parent-child interaction, the other is health. and the other is home safety. And so in my role with the National Center, I focus a lot on implementation support, training and implementing new agencies, and ongoing coaching and fidelity monitoring. So just like my colleagues here today, we've been doing our best over the past several months to continue supporting families as the pandemic has really changed the medium for service delivery, even as our providers in the field have continued. SafeCare is a member of the National Alliance of Home Visiting Models, and that's how I ended up here today. So the Model Alliance is one of 3 groups charged with steering the Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting Collaborative. And there's also an advisory team to the rapid response work with different subgroups like content and evaluation. And fortunately, I've gotten to kind of be in both those different areas. And so I've had to reflect a lot on what this work meant to me. And when I was thinking about it, the 3 different things I came up with really fit with the title of the collaborative. So I'm going to start by talking about the collaborative piece, because I think that idea has really influenced how the work has been done. And just as a participant on the advisory board, as a model rep, you really see that the collective vision has been bigger than individual models. And this has really been passed down from each of the key steering groups. So Parents as Teachers, the Institute, and the Home Visiting Alliance. Meetings that we've had have been really regularly scheduled and frequent enough for us, whether it's through a steering group or advisory group, to give input on content that's coming through or reflect on past webinars, upcoming webinars, and more. Our input feels very valued. And the fact that it cuts across the field so well, it's not just the model level, it's not just states, it's a little bit of everyone. It really does give that feeling of collaboration. So that collaborative feel really helps keep the process and the goal on track. Our goal really is to support professionals during this time and in turn support families. So that collaboration keeps us focused on that. No one's focused only on their model or only on their state or only on their anything. And Sophia mentioned earlier that being in the company of others going through similar things at the same time, that kind of gives a nice feeling of comfort during hard times. And this collaborative has also served that purpose as well. Another thing that came to mind was rapid, and that's also in the title of this collaborative. One thing I've noticed is that whenever there is an ask for anything, the timeline is very clear. So in my case, if I've been asked to volunteer to help out with content for something or review content for an upcoming webinar, I always know that there might be limitations on the turnaround or a really quick turnaround. And I feel very comfortable saying I do have time or I don't have time. This keeps things and expectations very realistic. And since we're all trying to figure things out as we go along these days, the collaborative has been very upfront about that. Turnaround is quick, so we really need to commit to addressing topics as soon as possible. And then finally, there's this responsive quality to everything. And the collaborative has been very responsive to the needs of families, to the needs of providers, and to the needs of other stakeholders who are supporting families right now. And I did want to speak briefly about how this part has helped SafeCare as a model. Back in the spring, around March, just like everyone, we were trying to figure this all out. And we pulled together the best guidance we could about virtual visits, kind of knowing that we would have to improvise some and respond because the situation was so rapidly changing. And then as soon as the rapid response webinar started, we were able at our national center to really integrate a lot of the tips from those webinars into our own guidance around virtual home visits, especially around engagement and parent-child interactions, since those were the first topics that we as a model had a lot of questions about. We were able to put that guidance into action, pass it on to our implementing agencies, who were then, really at a loss themselves for what to do at that time. It was a lot of really quickly changing, quickly moving parts. And then we were also able to push out the webinars that the Rapid Response group has been doing so that implementing agencies were able to watch them and learn from them. And this has meant a smoother delivery of services for families, which, like I said before, has kind of been the ultimate goal overall. And if you could just move on to the next slide. And so next, I just wanted to mention real quick about how the different subgroups I've participated on have really followed these different qualities of rapid, responsive, and collaborative. So with the content team, the review is very, very guided. All of us within the different subgroups know that our comments will be valued. We're also given a lot of information about what the subgroup is looking for in terms of review. So it's not just like, hey, take a look at this and get it done. It's very much guided review, and that has been super helpful. The other thing with content review has been that even though I may come with a model lens, I'm not looking at it in terms of does it fit with our model or not. It's really about how will this help build all models up? And Sophia mentioned the term model agnostic or model neutral earlier, and that really has informed the way that that we've been reviewing content, and the way that I've been kind of thinking of this content. And then finally, just with the advisory board, I'm really sitting on the advisory board, not as a representative of SafeCare. It was very clear that I'm there as a representative of Model Voice and to really speak to the issues that affect all models. And I think that that's a really important point, that with this collaborative, there has been a lot of action. There's been a lot of content to come out of it, a lot of webinars and learning. But there's some really great symbolism in seeing models work together to respond to the needs of providers and family. So there's a lot of work that's gone into that, into making that model voice come through. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it and really get to know colleagues through this experience.
I got caught a second time with the mute. I think that was actually a third time. Thank you so much, Roddy. You are passionate and deeply engaged in this work, and we're so grateful to have you as a major part of this effort. I'd like to now welcome Portia. So Portia, from your work with parents, share your insights about their perspective as a participant in virtual home visits.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and have the opportunity to bring the parents into this virtual room that we're in right now. And as I reflect on my insights, I'd like all of you out there who are part of this webinar and Zoom meeting to kind of reflect on your own experience with families as I'm talking. Think about how you've been with them, think about what you've done together, and begin to maybe even focus on what has happened in those relationships. And perhaps even one particular family might come to mind as I talk through and share my reflections as I listen to the collaborative work that has been done by the organizations that have presented before me. It's very, very important work, and collaboration and the working relationships that have been built across the models is also a part of what has benefited parents. So the first thing I want you to do as you are reflecting and you're locating that family and that particular family that comes up for you as you think about parents and families, I'd like you to look in the chat box, because I want to acknowledge that I put a resource in there from an advisory committee that I belong to. It's called the Rapid Early Childhood Survey. And I want to acknowledge Phil Fisher and his team at the University of Oregon, and specifically the Department of Translational Neuroscience and their early childhood survey. So I'm not going to report on that survey. I'm encouraging you to connect with it, to click on it and follow us. I'm honored to serve on the advisory committee with others, but the reason why I'm putting that there as a resource is for 3 reasons. One is I think it will provide you some information that might be helpful. The second reason I'm putting it there is because the survey elevates the voices of parents and families. This survey has been going on since April 6th, weekly. And it's about parents. It's parents sharing their experiences and their children's experience. It's about child development. It's about parent and family and caregiver mental health. It's about child mental health. It's about stress and distress, and it's about health, and it's about basic needs. It's about all of the elements that families are experiencing as they are going through this COVID-19 pandemic. I'm not going to report on it. I encourage you to check it out with Phil and his team and join us in the publications that appear twice a month. So let's reflect together. My first insight and reflection is that staff and home visitors have gone through this pandemic together. You've experienced it with the families. You've experienced and observed the financial hardship that families have gone through. You've experienced and gone with it through them the financial struggles to meet basic needs. You've understood and tried to help with their struggle for just food, their struggle to pay for utilities, their struggle to pay for housing. You've been there together and experienced it as parents have been under stress and become distressed. You've experienced the mental health struggles that they've gone through as this pandemic continues and as they continue to struggle to be the best parent that they can be and take care of the needs of their family and their children. You've also experienced the distress that parents have reported to you about how their children are experiencing this pandemic, about the well-being and health of their children. You both, staff, home visitors, and parents have experienced this in different ways, but no doubt about it, you've experienced this pandemic together. The second insight is that in the face of these adversities that I've just described and challenges, the real deal is that even in the presence of these stressors, parents have demonstrated resilience and continue to persist in the face of these adversities. The third insight is that it's been the power of these relationships that were formed during the COVID-19 pandemic, these meaningful virtual connections, the power of those connections and relationships with families have brought the families this far. And it's the power of those relationships that will continue to carry the parents and you together going forward. We cannot underestimate the power of relationships, even those that were formed through the virtual connections. And I acknowledge for you as staff how hard you've worked to make those virtual connections become powerful relationships. Finally, I want to leave you with a quote by Maya Angelou to reflect upon as you think about your work as a home visitor supervisor, or home visitor director, and you think about the virtual connections transformed into powerful relationships. I want you to think about this quote. Maya says, "I've learned that people will forget what you have said. People will forget what you have done, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Now, my final insight is that even with all the work and materials that you created to be supportive and relevant to families during this pandemic, I think what you've done most of all is create and recreate the power of relationships, because it is those relationships and how you make the families feel through all of it that matters the most. So I'd like to leave you with those reflections.
Portia, thank you so much for those reflections and also for the opportunity to access a resource that gives us this ongoing perspective directly from parents. So I'm so glad you could join us this afternoon.
Happy to be here.
So in the interest of, actually we're doing pretty good on time, I would like to now welcome Joshua, Dr. Sparrow, to tell us more about your offerings at Braselton Touchpoint Center and how they've been enhanced by your work with the collaborative.
Thank you so much, Constance. And I have to say, Portia, that what Maya Angelou is exactly what I never forget about you. Can we have the next slide, please? Sierra, thank you. So back in February, I was in a meeting with Constance Gully and her wonderful colleagues at Parents as Teachers, and that was a time where we were just beginning to do the elbow handshake, no masks, really didn't know what was going to hit us. And we were already thinking about this proven virtual home visiting model and thinking about how it might be the thing we all would really have to build out for the services that we provide. So I mentioned this slide, the triple virus pandemic, doing what we can as fast as we can to reach as many as we can. And the triple virus pandemic is the coronavirus, economic collapse, and the public health crisis of racism. That's a 400-year-old public health crisis. Next slide, please. And this work looking at what we could do with virtual home visiting to reach further and more really was made possible by the vision, creativity, and generosity of Constance Gully and our fabulous rapid response virtual home visiting colleagues, some of whom you've met today on this webinar, and our good friend Malia Ramler, who has been so supportive and so encouraging, and certainly Maya Angelou's words apply to you too, Malia. We have been supported to make what we're doing free for all by the Overdeck Family Foundation and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and they both really were extremely responsive and looking for what it was that we could do to accomplish the kinds of things that Portia closed her remarks with, which is to rebuild and strengthen connections in this time where we're all so isolated. And I also want to thank the relentless creativity, energy, and commitment to racial equity and social justice of our team that's putting this together really quickly. We're talking about rapid responses here, and our guest panelists. Next slide, please. So this is the idea. We at the Braselton Touchpoint Center since 1996 have been looking at all of the family-facing professionals and organizations and all of the sectors within early childhood home visiting, early intervention, child welfare, perinatal health, pediatric health, infant and parental health, children's libraries, and more as a set of sectors and fields that really need to be woven together to come to a common language, to create seamless and consistent experiences for parents, and to join together with communities that get mobilized by a vision that they share. And so looking at what's inside of virtual home visiting, we began to think there's this process with the rapid response virtual home visiting model of learning from home visitors and the families they serve what hurts right now, what is really hard right now, what is even worse than before, what is working, and what is working with digital technology, with screens, and what's different about it, and how can we make it work better. And so we began to think what we were learning alongside home visitors and the families they serve would, to a great extent, be really useful for early childhood educators, childcare providers, early interventionists, pediatricians, child welfare workers, and others. So what we've done has been to create 6 webinars in a series, and then to repeat them 2 more times, based on the idea that this situation is going to keep on moving really quickly and keep on changing. And if we do 6 where we distill some of the rich learning from the virtual home visiting webinar series, but then circle back and do it again when the world has changed and we've learned from the work that we've done, we will be able to bring to folks and create with participants what is needed as this triple-headed pandemic plays out its course. So we're looking for commonalities across these sectors and also trying to speak to each of them individually. We're curating and crowdsourcing both what's hard and what the solutions are so that we're co-creating knowledge we are learning alongside. And to that end, in addition to this a series of webinars, 6 repeated 2 more times, but different and refreshed and adapted each time to how the world is changing, we've also created a peer learning community where we can really come together to learn about what we can do with screens to do the best we can while there still are grave risks of coming together in many communities. So let me ask you to go to the next slide, and I'm going to put that link into the chat for you. So just quickly, I know these are a lot of words, but I just wanted to point out some of the topics we've touched, and many of these come from the virtual home visiting webinar that we've adapted for the other professionals and sectors. And the print is small, but I wanted to see that our guest presenters on these are from all over the country and from all of the different disciplines across these sectors. So engaging families using a strengths-based approach in the virtual world, partnering with families virtually, and providing staff support and supervision virtually. Next slide. And again, in this first series, which is coming to an end shortly, developmental screenings on your screen. How do you do development screenings when you're looking into a phone or a computer, and so is the family you're working with? Challenging conversations with families when you're virtual, and then taking your care of yourself as a virtual service provider. So again, the small print is just people from all over the country, from all different sectors working together on this. Next slide. And you'll see on the next slide, these are the topics for the second series of 6 out of the 3 that we'll be doing. And you can see the dates here. The next one, the next series begins October 8th, goes through December 17th. We'll have one more series beginning in January. And you can see some of the topics are the same, but we put in some new ones because the world has changed. So you'll see finding the balance with virtual service delivery is the balance between having our lives go on the screen and having our families at home, and some of us having to actually leave our homes as essential workers. So finding that balance when our world has been taken over in some ways by Zoom. I want to mention that, all the way through the rapid response virtual home visiting work, we've all been scratching our heads about what we can do with regard to the digital divide and the lack of equitable access to broadband and devices, and funders are working with us to see what we can do to begin to fill in that gap. Another one that will be new next time around is bridging the gap using a hybrid approach, because back in the first series, many communities were really doing all of their work online. Now, depending on where you live and what sector you're in, you may be using a remote only, you may be in childcare centers or preschools all the way, or you may be using a hybrid approach. So that's something else which has changed. And we've also added, you can see on December 3rd, a more intensive focus on trauma, resilience, and healing, because it is now really clear how this triple-headed crisis is so hard for all of us in some universal ways and some very individual ways. Next slide, please. So this webinar was meant to focus on scaling emerging models. So I just wanted to show you that there are lots and lots of people who are logging in for this. We started with 2,500 in July. There were 3,000 people logging in as of mid-September. And the learning community started with 78, and now there's almost 1,500 people in the learning community. So to say very rapidly, this has scaled, this professional development supports for people working with families across all of the family-facing sectors, all of the early childhood sectors. Next slide. So I just want to show you a quick clip that comes from one of our wonderful panelists, Heidi Roybal, who is an early interventionist and mental health specialist from Pueblo Acoma in New Mexico. And we'll just take a quick look at how she shows us what she's learning from families in doing this work online. So if you could just show us the video. Sierra, thank you.
The home visitor said, tell me about the screening. What were some of the things you discovered? What were you learning? And the family said, you know, we really didn't have time to do it. We're so sorry. We wish we could have done the screening. We didn't do it. We were making tortillas last night. And the home visitor thought, this is an amazing opportunity because the natural environment was at play. There's a routine at play. It's something the family was already doing. And the home visitor was able to tell the family, well, you know, when you're making tortillas, there's so much learning and development happening. Tell me about how your baby participated. What were some of the things your child wanted to do? And so the family was able to share this beautiful story of a toddler helping to make tortillas. And the home visitor was checking off domains in the ASQ for language, for fine motor skills, for problem solving.
Next slide, please. So I just want to close with two comments. One is that the way that we're building these is not by coming forward as if we had all of the knowledge and all the answers, but really coming alongside home visitors and all of the other professionals in the sector and the families that they work with to learn together what's hurting, what's hard, what can we do to make things just a little bit better? How do we use this technology? What's hard about using it? How can we make this technology work for more of us? And this is really a way of centering, one way of centering cultural responsiveness, rebalancing power to work towards social justice and racial equity, because we are not coming with this notion that we have knowledge from the white privileged ivory tower to impose on people, but we're creating, we're facilitating a platform in which people can co-create this knowledge together. And then the last comment I want to close with is that in this work, we've learned how hungry people are more than ever for connection and for community, even if it's virtual, how much people need to be heard, how much they need to know that they're not alone, to be able to share their struggles and pain, as well as the strengths they're finding within themselves, their colleagues, and the children and families they work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. And that was a great example of some of the parallels that are happening with this work that started focusing on home visiting and is now touching state systems as well as other early intervention services. So, and Joshua, it's so great to have you at the table developing content and helping to sift through the feedback that we're getting from professionals in the field that it has been informing all of this work. And I think the power of the collaborative, one of the questions was about how can we collaborate in the same way, and the power of this collaborative is that families have been at the center of all of this work. And that is where the power comes from, the voice and what I believe is the power of parents and caregivers. So thank you so much for helping to resonate that to the professionals. Now I really want to give Malia Ramler, I want to invite her to the conversation and give her an opportunity for some closing remarks before we make the shift to Q&A.
Thanks, Constance, very much. And thanks, Josh, for naming and bringing into the room the triple pandemic and the weight that everyone is feeling. I want to invite us in closing this amazing conversation. I want to invite us just to step back for a minute and just acknowledge that, you know, when Constance said in March there had been 20,000 virtual home visits, and by August she was at 269,000. That when the Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting Group was first asked to sort of step up to the plate on this, that in 2 weeks, they had put up the first of what would be weekly webinars and touch points for the field. And that again, by August, there had been 43,000 home visiting professionals who had logged on. And that all of you leaders were doing this while not only turning around and serving your communities in these remarkable ways, but also dealing with the pandemic yourselves and managing children learning online and whatever else was going on. So I just want to step back and say this is remarkable and really lift up and thank and acknowledge the incredible hard work and generosity and vision of the leaders that made this happen. Constance Scully and her team from Parents as Teachers, Gina Capito from the National Alliance of Home Visiting Models, and all of her colleagues at that table, including Roddy, the Institute for the Advancement of Family Service Professionals, that is the platform, and Joshua Sparrow, and Brazelton Touchpoint Center, who are creating the dissemination mechanisms. It is remarkable work accomplished incredibly quickly. So the first thing to say is appreciation and just acknowledgement. And every time I get the chance to be in this conversation, I ask Constance, like, how did this happen? This is amazing. What is the secret sauce? And I think each of our speakers today spoke to some of those ingredients. So just to lift up a few of those themes. Sophia started by talking about a sense of urgency and what's possible when that sense of urgency is here. And I think that is a thread that goes through, is perhaps this pandemic gave us permission to be bold, to do things we would not have otherwise done, to take risks we would not otherwise have taken. And when we start thinking about what's durable and what we take from this experience and go forward, let's think about both the mechanical things like the use of technology, but also those relational and less concrete things. And that is certainly one of them, that there's been a lot of courage, and that courage extends to every single home visitor on the phone right now and every single family who tried to do something new in a really difficult time. So there's been a lot of courage and boldness. Roddy talked a lot about the vision being bigger than the models, that in what the Home Visiting Network principle might, to use their words, mission, not organization, that folks kept their eye on a prize that was bigger for the field than their individual organization or their individual place. And that has been remarkable. The idea that if you look at the Rapid Response Virtual Home Visiting logo, nothing is branded. This isn't Parents as Teachers content. This isn't Brazelton Touchpoints content. This isn't Safe Start content. This belongs to the field. And so that speaks to an enormous amount of generosity and putting the field before anybody's individual interests. And Roddy also spoke about this great practice of really listening to practitioners in the field. When you talked, Roddy, about what it felt like to be both a contributor and somebody who could use that, and that tight relationship with local implementation agencies like yours is absolutely one of those critical ingredients. And then Portia and Joshua talking about really the power of relationships in making all of this work, because all of these risks and the ability to do things with the grace to say it's not going to be perfect, we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to do this because it's needed, requires trust and relationship. And nobody knew when they were innovating, Constance, when you were innovating with remote home visiting, or Roddy, when you were joining a national alliance, that these would be the ingredients of what was needed in the moment of crisis. So it's an invitation to imagine what can we be doing now that allow us to meet whatever is ahead, because Joshua is reminding us that conditions are dynamic and changing every day. And in addition to the 3 pandemics you mentioned, for those of you out there who are serving families dealing with the 4th pandemic of climate change, and there's floods happening in the country and there's fires happening in the country, we don't know what challenges our home visiting programs and our families are going to be facing next. But what this shows us is what's possible when the building blocks are there to be adaptive and creative and do whatever it takes to meet the needs of the families at the center. And that's really what this project is an example of, thanks to bold, generous leadership and trust built on relationships. And it's really an honor to be able to learn from that and be part of it. And I think with our remaining time, I want to give it back to Constance and make sure that all of you tuning in have time for your questions to be answered.
Thank you so much, Malia. This has been an amazing ride. The freight train moves fast, and I just feel bad for any chickens that get in the way, because we are forging ahead to support professionals so that they can support families. And without Heising Simons, we would not have been able to do this. And I do want to say that I know when it comes to home visiting, the National Alliance for Home Visiting Models has been around. We've been at the table together for almost a decade now. And this particular effort, Rapid Response, also includes an additional 14 models that are either regional or smaller models that are not necessarily members of the Alliance yet. So this is an even broader effort where they are all engaging in the development of content. I do want to give time for Q&A. Please post your questions in the Q&A, but before we begin, I know we have a special participant in today's webinar, Dr. Calvin Moore Jr., CEO of the Council for Professional Recognition and Early Childhood Education Leaders, and an early childhood education leader. Dr. Moore, please share your observations with us.
Constance, I'm so thrilled to be with you and be in proximity to the great work that your collaborative partners are doing around home visiting. At the Council, you know, we're focused on improved performance and recognition of early childhood professionals, which include home visitors across the nation. And I just want to say, I've been so impressed with the information that's been delivered to the participants today. And being a participant, I want to thank you for your thoughtful leadership for home visiting programs around the country. And I have learned a lot. I mean, that we have to be nimble during this time. Rapid response is needed as we meet the needs of children and families, that we have to be flexible. And Portia, I mean, we need to take you around the country. Just the thoughtful sensitivity that you brought forward today really captured my imagination. At the Council, we have noticed an uptick in the interest of our Child Development Associate credential for home visitors. And so I wanted to share that with you and to let you know that folks around the country are really interested in what home visitors do. Not only have we had an interest in the home visitor CDA, but also in our competency standards. People are really looking for ways to be responsive to families. And I just wanted to share with you one example of how the Head Start community has really rallied around home visiting in this virtual mode, and wanted to give a shout out to Ron Herndon, who is a Head Start director in Portland, Oregon, who shared his policies and procedures with the Head Start community in Region 4 so that they could be nimble and so that family advocates in Head Start could begin to work virtually with Head Start families and not have to start from scratch, not have to start from building the underpinnings of policies and procedures. And I think that's what you're asking us to do today. So thank you. I'm going to share Ron's information in the chat box so that folks who want to reach out to him as well as to your fabulous organizations for the support that they need. And remember that the Council for Professional Recognition is also here to be a support to you and the home visitors around the country as we move this sector forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Calvin, and thank you for sharing yet another resource. And not that I think every resource matters right now when it comes to the professionals and equipping everyone to strengthen families and communities. So I'm so encouraged and excited. I know Patty Marakovich serves and represents Head Start well on the Alliance for Home Visiting Models, and Head Start is at the table for rapid response as well. So thank you so much. I want to get to the questions quickly. I think Alan Gutman has a question. I know early on in the pandemic, there was a concern regarding a market reduction in suspected child abuse and reporting. Have there been any models of training home visitors who are mandated reporters for virtually recognizing signs of potential suspected child abuse? Do any of our panelists want to respond to that question, or I can share some of what has come up during the rapid response? Roddy, I know that's very high on the radar for Safe Care especially.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for us, we definitely pushed out the screening and assessment webinar that took place a while back. I can't remember which one it was, but one of the webinars has some information about that, and that's on the rapid response webpage. Apart from that, our local agencies have been figuring that out themselves a lot, but the content from the Rapid Response Collaborative has certainly been a good complement to that information.
Yeah, and I know one of the concerns in the current climate is not recognizing instances of child abuse and neglect. At parents as teachers, one thing that we have seen is a statistically significant increase in the number of referrals from Child Protective Services during the pandemic. Does not mean that the incidents are being recognized more often, but agencies are considering the opportunity to refer families into home visiting supports. Joe Stute had a question for Roddy. What are some of the volunteer and philanthropic organizations that have been working with you in Safe Care? This would assist in advocating for the organization he works with. And what are they doing with you? This is Joe Stout from the Masons.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So at our national center, not too much, to be honest, but with local implementing agencies, I think some of them have figured out their own ways at the local level to partner with community groups, with funding bodies. Constance, you and Malia probably can speak better to the Rapid Response Collaborative funding. I'm not as familiar with that piece. I know Heising Simons has been huge, so.
Yeah, for Rapid Response, Heising Simons was the first organization to step up, and it really just started with a call from Malia, and the question was, how can we get what you know and what you've learned to the field? And the key was the first word in the name, rapid. How can we get it to professionals quickly? So since that time, others have joined. Pritzker is supporting some of the systems work associated with the Rapid Response Collaborative, as well as Kellogg is
I'm
also.
having trouble connecting to the internet.
I think Alexa
Take a
thinks
look
I'm
at the
talking
help
to
section
her.
in your Alexa app.
I don't know what word I said. It must have sounded like her name. My apologies. The another funder that has come to the table beyond Pritzker and W.K. Kellogg is AmChip with some CARES Act dollars through HRSA, and that is helping to extend the number of modules that we can develop through the durable content, as well as supporting some of the TA structures around virtual home visiting in the States.
And Constance, maybe also worth lifting up the work that the folks at Ashby and state advocates have done in this time to help our state and federal funders provide the kind of flexibility that's needed to do things differently, so that the sense of reimbursement being dependent on fidelity has a little bit more flexibility in this moment, which is really welcome, and maybe one of those things that can be a durable learning to go forward with.
That's been a really helpful, thank you so much, Malia. A helpful component of the collaborative is the connection to HRSA, ACF, and Ashby, asking those questions. What does fidelity look like in the midst of a pandemic? How are you acknowledging and allowing for virtual visits to be considered a part of what is the evidence-based, or what are the evidence-based model delivery systems? So Ashby advocated early on, and HRSA back in maybe early April, late March, actually provided guidance to models to say, we are approving and authorizing you to please proceed with connecting and reaching families through virtual home visiting. Another great outcome of the effort is the Home Visiting is Essential campaign and resources that we're availing through Rapid Response, as well as through the models, Ashby, and state systems, to encourage and advocate for home visiting as a strategy to overcome and mitigate some of the disparities, whether they're health, education, or just general economic disparities that we know are impacting racial communities in that are the result of 400 years of racism that Joshua mentioned earlier. We already know that this pandemic, all of the pandemics that we're in the midst of right now have magnified the challenges in Black, Brown, and communities in Indian country. So I'm going to go back to the questions. Do we have a new one? Cynthia Grace from Divine Kepner. Cynthia Grace, Divine Kepner. How can we help parents in rural areas to connect with resources in their area who are now homeschooling for the first time with multiple children from toddlers to higher grades? There is a whole new situation. I think my screen went someplace else. I'm sorry. It scrolled down to another question. I didn't finish reading Cynthia's question.
I've got it here. So is there any thinking about how we retain families when they may not want to engage online? Good question. Is there training for home visitors that might help them be creative and engaging through online platforms?
The Rapid Response has a ton of resources and tools out there. It does not mean that it is well received and welcomed by every family. Home visiting is driven by the voice of a family, and some of the questions that are asked early on is, are you willing to engage in virtual visits? It also is helpful to go back to model guidance every opportunity that you get, because these additional strategies are coming out and bubbling up within models, just like they are across model with Rapid Response. The strategies look different in different communities. I mean, we're hearing about home visitors that are pulling up in the driveway with a hotspot so that the family can access the internet for their visit. The digital divide is real. When we look at the numbers in total, it looks as though interactive video conferencing is the most frequent, the most frequent method of home visits. It depends on the community. When we look at Indian country, it flips completely, and more of those visits are conducted via telephone as opposed to IVC because of the lack of access to broadband. So the challenges look very different from community to community. I've heard about home visitors driving to the top of a hill so that they can access Wi-Fi. Just because a family or a professional has a device does not mean that they have access to the internet in a meaningful way. Sometimes it's so slow that it gets frustrating, and it may be just as easy to shift to a phone call as opposed to interactive video conferencing. But in rural communities, it is a bigger challenge. One of our directors of MACV at the National Center says, you have to bring families your very best, because what happens on a visit for a family is an indication of whether the family will welcome you back into their home. So every strategy you can connect to is monumental. So Emily, do you want to pick up on the next question?
Sure, and I realized that there was some glitch in the Q&A, so sorry if that last question got a little mixed up. So I see that this is Heather Tritton's question, which is, it's very fortunate that we have been able to move our service. It's kind of the same question to the virtual world. We are now hearing from home visitors that they and their families are tired of the virtual platform. Is there any thinking about how we retain families? So I think you already addressed that one, didn't you? Yes, okay. So then, and then maybe just even building on, I think you addressed this one too, the response of the home visiting community to the digital divide. Do you feel like that was just addressed?
Well, I think from the home visiting community, there are dollars that are going to support families to get access to devices and hotspots and things of that nature, but it is still not making a huge impact on closing that divide.
Got it.
One of the things I would like to share in North Carolina is that we are using some of our CARES dollars to address the divide. But like you said, Constance, you know, we can provide devices with broadband, but if the connectivity in that area isn't what it is, you know, isn't available, the saturation, and it's not going to work. So I've been excited about conversations of really putting pressure on the cable companies, the internet providers, to actually build the infrastructure. But we are doing what we can, leveraging our network to be able to provide devices with broadband specifically for families to participate in home visiting and parenting education programs.
And I think another challenge that we forget about is everyone is not as tech savvy as the next person. So just because you have a device and even access to the internet does not mean that you're comfortable using it.
Yes, thank you. That's absolutely right. We're actually building in the support to be able to help families just turn on the device. So that's so important to really recognize that. I think Malia said this, we are asking people to do new things in a very tough time. So every little bit of support matters. Yeah.
And that was actually, I think, the topic of the first, or one of the very first response virtual home visiting webinars way back in March.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how innovative home visitors are. I mean, for parents as teachers, group connections are a big part of our model and several other models, and the creativity with giving parents that opportunity to connect with one another and still having virtual group socializations has had a stronger impact, where they're lasting longer than their schedule, because parents want to stay connected, and having those opportunities to connect not just with your home visitor, but with other families in the community. And technically, right now, you can connect with families and communities you don't get to connect with on a regular basis, because if you have access to broadband and a device. So the creativity is interesting. I'm hearing dropping off, one's mailing books, parent story time, families having recipe times where families are cooking and sharing recipes with other families and just having different opportunities to connect. So I think that the Zoom fatigue, the virtual engagement fatigue is real for all of us. And at the same time, the need to innovate is, I mean, the agility is becoming the skill that has to improve as we go. I think we're all learning as we go, and we're all a little tired of what's been a really heavy time for most people, for just about all people.
So we have an interesting question here because you all talk so much about the importance of relationships. And so this question is from Chelsea Moore. What are the key resources for professional development of the soft skills used during virtual home visits to build relationships versus capturing and monitoring data? So what are the sort of key resources there?
Anybody want to take that?
I just would offer that the first webinar in the virtual service delivery series that we did back in July, which you can watch online. You just have to join the learning community, which is free, is about a strengths-based approach to engaging families. And it will keep on circling back. And the focus is really on building relationships. And by doing it, by looking for the strengths that you can see and hear that are unique and specific to this family. And often they're manifest by what you can see and hear on the screen in the parent-child interaction or in the little bit of the child behavior that you can see. So there's a whole set of strategies. I don't think that they're soft versus hard. I think that they're maybe the heart. And they're certainly central that come out of the work that we do at the Brownston Touchpoint Center. And so I would just suggest that you take a look at those and share them with people you partner with who you think would find them helpful.
Great. And there, I have to say there's a question on here from Alan Gutman that I think I can answer. So the question is, are the panel members aware of any of the major broadcast or cable television networks stepping up to provide additional care and educational information services to families during the pandemic? And I'm going to answer this with a plug for the GLR Learning Tuesday coming up on October 13th, because that is going to feature Univision along with Too Small to Fail, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. And there's also been previous webinars that we've had with PBS, and so if you go into our clip, you'll find the slides and the information about all of those webinars. But please join us on October 13th. And I've seen that we've just posted our poll, so we would really love your feedback. While we continue to go through our Q&A, if you could please complete the poll that you see in front of your screen. And then anybody else have any comments on the question of broadcast networks?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that local affiliates of PBS are actually providing class sessions on TV. And it is another way of addressing the digital divide in communities where people have TVs, but not internet. And I know that in some tribal communities where people have access to television, but not necessarily internet, this is also being used, basically televising instruction for young children and all the way through, actually.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, in North Carolina, our local PBS affiliate is actually carrying antennas to provide families to just, get back to basics, accessing content that way.
And Sophia, this next question is actually directed at you from Mary Matthew. She says, I love how you share the vision of increasing the role home visiting and parent education as a part of the broader system of maternal and child health and education during the pandemic and beyond, not just focusing on the health and school system. What are some of your ideas for doing this or experiences with this in North Carolina?
Yeah, sure. A couple quick things come to mind, and thank you for that question, because this conversation is all about integrating and aligning across sectors. So I would say, one, what the home visiting rapid response initiative showed us is that we need to truly act across sectors. When we were participating and engaging, this wasn't limited to any particular profession or field, as well as the Brazelton Touchpoints webinar series showed us that we really need to provide, truly act across sectors. So bring folks to the table when we are planning and creating visions like we did in North Carolina. Our home visiting and parenting education brought a range of folks to the table. We also did some family engagement and leadership planning last year that brought a range of people to the table. So I would say at minimum, it is and basically just inviting people to the conversation. A couple other things I'll say is that it's really important for our professionals across sectors to be in company with one another, which is again what we saw was possible with this rapid response. Really providing not just core competencies that speak across sectors, but also opportunities for professionals like teachers and home visitors to be in the same space, learning together, because at the core, as Portia so eloquently reminded us, it is about the relationships and how you make people feel in those relationships, and home visitors and teachers, infant mental health professionals, all the professionals that really are interfacing on the front line with families. We all can do a better job of really bringing them in space together. And Malia said it, it's one of the benefits of virtual. We now have no barriers of driving or who can attend. So I would say that asking people and thinking across sectors, inviting folks to the table, and really creating space to learn together.
Here's a super interesting question from Katrina Bellemare. If you had to give it an overall percentage, how effective would you say virtual sessions are for home visiting? And I guess I would add in comparison to in-person.
From what I'm seeing and hearing from the field, it varies. So there are some parents that prefer virtual engagement. It's just like anything else. It's a matter of preference. There are also home visitors that are just more, it depends on what you bring to the visit. So if you are apprehensive and nervous and concerned that this engagement is not an effective way to engage with families, that is what happens on the visit. When you come in excited, encouraged, I am reaching my family, I'm so glad we have this time, and you move forward. I mean, for parents as teachers, the guidance that we put out indicates that families, you know, for a home visitor or for a parent educator, there are particular components of a visit, and all three components of the visit are included. What we're seeing from an average visit time, it's still 59 minutes. So they're still reaching and connecting with families. Some of it is the way you see it before you start.
And I'd like to weigh in on that, and because I agree, I think the percentage, you know, I'm going, you know, percentages are fluctuating in my mind now, and it really depends on what aspect of the experience we're rating. And I would say from what we're hearing across the state and our local implementing agencies, it's a pretty high percentage, upwards of 75 to 80% as good. I mean, obviously being in physical proximity can, you know, almost never be replaced. But what we're hearing is that the virtual connections have actually opened up access for more families. And for me, that automatically shoots the percentage up, because too few families had barriers to accessing in-person visits. So I'd say pretty high.
And for us at Safe Care, we don't have an exact percentage, but just anecdotally, I'd say it's been a very pleasant surprise at how families are responding. And I think what Constance said about home visitors' mentalities has a lot to do with it, how they're approaching this new platform with apprehension or with, you know, a new like it's a new challenge or a new opportunity that can really affect the visits. As far as observations and the kind of skills that are tracked with our program with observations, there's been, I think, less of an impact on those skills than we would have expected on parent skills. And so that's also been pleasantly surprising.
Well, I see that we just have 1 minute left. So if you haven't yet, please complete our quick little survey. Your feedback is so important to us. And I'm going to say, I mean, what an amazing session. So much really good information, really important for us to have the chance to learn from your experience. So thank you, Constance. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Portia. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Malia. And thank you, Roddy. And also thank you, Dr. Calvin Moore, for your comments as well. Thank you to everyone. Thanks to all of you for your participation today. A few upcoming webinars, just quick plug. 2 next week that are going to be really great. Philanthropy stepping up to assure access to online learning, an opportunity to reverse learning loss. And then in the afternoon, promising high-tech, high-touch solutions for back to school. That's going to be all superintendents speaking about what they're doing in this crazy back to school time. So thank you again to all of you. And we hope that you'll be joining us again next week. And then, you know, again later in October for that, especially for that session that I mentioned with Uni Vizian to speak about what came up today. Thanks to all of you. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.